Pretty chilly morning around town today and around the rest of the state, the region, frankly. Look at the surface map from 8 o'clock this morning over the western Great Lakes states. There's snow in southwestern Ontario, crossing the border into the Arrowhead of Minnesota. There's snow in the Upper Peninsula. There's snow from Green Bay all the way up to Ironwood, Michigan, in the northeast part of our own state. So pretty chilly. I think the temperature outside is in the very low 30s, and it's probably not going to get to 45 today. So this is a really chilly day. That's on the order of 10 degrees or so below normal for the middle of April. So we are, in fact, paying the price for what we enjoyed in the first weekend in April. We're getting a little bit of a payback now. But generally across the country, the weather is not terrible everywhere. There's a cyclone off the coast of the Maritimes here with a little bit of snow in far eastern Nova Scotia. Then our cyclone over the western Great Lakes states, and then another one that's located sort of over the Intermountain West, perhaps now centered around Utah, south of the Salt Lake, and regions of high pressure interspersed in between them. There's an anticyclone out over the southeastern states, and there's one building over central Canada. There's one that's sitting. There's one sitting over central Canada. There's one that's kind of building its way into the central plains of the United States, as you can see across this map. The only places where there's really active weather is some widespread convective activity across Arkansas and Louisiana. We'll see that better on the radar summary. And then this linear band of precipitation almost along the cold front associated with this poorly organized and dying cyclone in the eastern U.S. that runs from maybe, say, the Pittsburgh or Gettysburg area in Pennsylvania all the way down to Little Rock. And then some widespread but scattered snows across parts of Wyoming, Idaho, Utah, Nevada, and even into far western Nebraska this morning, in addition to what we saw over our own region. And the temperatures this morning reflect this wintry complexion to at least a large part of the country. Look at the temperatures are below freezing or at freezing, all the way from Marquette, including Minneapolis, down to Des Moines is 32, 30 degrees at Omaha. So a lot of places in the Central Plains are below freezing or just barely below freezing. And then that's true also in the high terrain to the west. Warm temperatures prevail only along the Texas Gulf Coast and maybe the peninsula of Florida. But even in Charlotte and Raleigh, North Carolina, temperatures in the mid to low 50s at this time of day for them, 8 a.m., is a little bit chilly for the middle of April, not terribly so. And then the same is true in New England. But mostly it's the central and western half of the country that are a little bit chillier than normal. And as you might suspect, with these cold temperatures, there's no way the air holds very much water vapor, so the dew points will be low as well, and that is the case. Here's the dew point map across the country this morning about 7:30 our own time. We were 32, I think it said on that surface temperature map, 33, 25 dew point, 29 dew point at Green Bay, 31, almost the exact temperature at Marquette, but that's because it's near the lake. It's hard to get away from the fact that the air will be close to saturated there. But the only really high dew points, that is 50 degrees or higher, are in Texas and central Georgia, central Alabama, and central Mississippi, and then the peninsula of Florida, and a couple along the coast here in the Carolinas. Other than that, dew points are below 50 just about everywhere in the U.S., indicative of a rather chilly and dry air mass for the 14th of April this morning as the day dawns. The satellite movie across the continental United States and adjacent waters illustrates all of those weather systems. It doesn't even show we didn't see on our surface map, this one that's well south of Greenland. There's a cyclone spinning around counterclockwise. Here's the one we did see off the Maritimes in our surface map, and that's spinning counterclockwise to the southeast of Nova Scotia. Here is the center of the circulation of the storm associated with our region. And notice that the clouds are kind of a light gray as compared to a really bright white down here over the southern states. That's because these clouds are not very deep. They're radiating at a relatively warm temperature on their tops. And so they're not very deep clouds, and that probably compromises their ability to drop any precipitation out. And we're only seeing scattered snow flurries in a couple of places on the far northern fringe of this. And so we may or may not see a drizzle drop here today in Madison. I'd say the chances are not zero, but they're not very high. The heavier precipitation is organizing, and look how quickly it does so across eastern Texas, Louisiana, and Arkansas. These individual cumulus clouds that look like puffs of cotton just blow up in almost no time, and the entire region is then covered by a canopy. Not every place is raining, but it's wild in some of these places, heavy thunderstorm activity. And then the final circulation, I think that you can see, is a counterclockwise rotation that's sort of on the Nevada-Utah border by the end of this movie, and you can see it right about where the cursor is. Then that was the third storm that we saw on our surface map. And then widespread clear skies both along and to the west of the Pacific Northwest coast today, and we'll see that reflected in the satellite movie in just a minute. So a fairly inactive weather day, with the exception of the southeastern states, although an unusual weather day because it is chilly and chillier than normal across much of the country this morning. Here is the radar summary that I mentioned a moment ago, and you can see, first of all, in our own region, these are mostly snow showers across the northern part of the Lake Michigan and the upper peninsula of the state of Michigan. And then here's widespread precipitation, as I said, going all the way from about central Pennsylvania down to Little Rock. Then across most of Arkansas and Louisiana, you'll notice it's speckled with a lot of red and orange. These are all very intense local thunderstorms. I don't think the conditions are right for these to be tornadic in nature, but there will be hail almost surely out of these, maybe even some strong surface winds. So they may show up as maybe on the minor side of damage reports. I hope that that's the case, that there's no tornadic activity. That's certainly the way that it looks right now. And then some scattered snow showers, as I mentioned, centered maybe along the Nevada-Utah border. That's where that third circulation center is. And then a few snow showers across Montana, also western Nebraska and southeastern Wyoming. But this is a really active weather region down in the south today as we're looking at it. Okay, here's the 500 millibar map from last night. Unfortunately, it's not 7 a.m. We never get that one on time. But you can see unmistakably all four, actually, of the disturbances that we noted on the satellite movie. Here is the cutoff upper-level cyclone to the south of, that's Greenland. To the south of Greenland, that's the one tied to the one that was off of our surface map, but visible on our satellite movie. This is the storm that is also completely cut off. It's a closed circulation center sitting off of the maritime provinces of Canada. The circulation of our storm affecting us today is also closed off, not quite as dramatically, but it's closed off over western Lake Superior and northern Wisconsin, and not surprisingly, I should say, that's where the precipitation associated with it is focused, on the northern portion of this storm. And then there's one closed contour for the circulation center associated with the storm that from last night to this morning has moved from northwestern Nevada to northeastern Nevada. So that's moved a little bit, and that storm is now located here. But boy, it's a beautiful example of just a string of pearls of little cyclones along the way here, and in between each one of them is a little bit of ridginess. And that's characteristically the case. So a fairly boring weather pattern, I must say, across the United States. It's more interesting over Alaska and northern Canada, and that's probably going to ensure that it stays a little bit chillier than normal for us, for reasons we may talk about a little bit on Friday. And then finally, the satellite movie gets compromised, unfortunately, here on the West Coast, but for a while you can see a couple of really interesting features that gets compromised like that at the end. One is a fairly intense storm that's making its way onto the eastern part of the state of Alaska, southeastern part of Alaska. So there'll be some widespread precipitation, some of it snow, some of it rain, over in north of Anchorage and into eastern Alaska. And then here's another little disturbance. Notice the cloud top colors are kind of gray. So again, not very deep clouds. They're not radiating at very cold temperatures, but it's a beautiful little counterclockwise swirl that comes right off the Aleutian chain and develops here in the northeast part of the Pacific Ocean. And then widespread cloud. There's the state of Alaska right here. And so there's widespread cloudiness moving poleward, maybe ahead of this broad circulation much farther to the north that is coming out of the tropics. So this is a tropical plume of moisture and cloudiness that may or may not connect with something that could deliver weather to the California coast later in the week. And then finally, notice how clear it is all the way from halfway up the British Columbia coast down to Northern California. There's not a cloud in the sky across this whole region. So a beautiful day in the Pacific Northwest. And one gets a taste of these in mid-April from having lived there a number of years in my life. You don't really see them come in full bore until probably late June, but they do start to show up every once in a while in April, and that makes living in the Northwest worth it. You get 6 months of cloudiness and dreariness, but boy, when the summer and the sun comes out, it stays sunny for extended periods of time in the Pacific Northwest. You have a beautiful summer there. Now, this is a little early for summer, but it's kind of a day that might resemble summer out there. Okay.